want to make you watch the film A Man for All Seasons. Okay? That's I don't know if it's easy to find. I can share my copy with you. But my problem is my copy has no subtitles. And I think most of you will have an easier time with subtitles. So um I don't know. It can do you does anyone think they can find a copy of A Man for All Seasons, which is a 1960 something movie, um, with subtitles? If so, please tell me. But if not, then sorry, you'll have to watch it without subtitles. Okay? But please check if you can find a copy with subtitles. Okay, I'm going to put the title in the chat. There. So can we decide if I'm going to ask you to watch that film? Should I can actually just have you watch it in the classroom since we have a 3 hour class. We can watch it in the classroom. Would that be better for you, or would you prefer that I just share a copy of the film with you and then you watch it on your own, and then we just won't have class on that day? What's your preference? I know we will have class, but shorter because I asked you to watch 2 hours for the movie. So what's your preference? Should we have a class? Should you just share it with you, or should I just let you watch it in the classroom? Okay, you think about it, and then after class, let's vote. Okay, all right. Because if we're going to show it in the classroom, I'm just gonna show it. I'm just gonna lecture for like an hour to 30 minutes, and then I'll let you watch it in the classroom for the rest of the time, if that's easier for you. Okay. Anyways, okay. So after I lecture, so today we're going to talk about Saint Thomas, and the movie, interestingly, will be about Saint Thomas More. Yay. If you know him, he's the one who King Henry beheaded because he wouldn't but anyway, there's a long story about it. I won't tell you. You watch it and see what happens. It's a very interesting film. It has a very real dilemma for Saint Thomas. And that's what I want you to look into. All right. So here we go. Share screen. So today we talk about Saint Thomas Aquinas and the natural law, okay, or the natural order and the human text, because that's what we're going to be looking into. I think this would be particularly interesting for you as well, because a lot of Catholic moral and political thought is based on Saint Thomas's natural law, even moral theory. What is it again? Yeah, basically, a lot of our ethics is based on natural law. And I think even St. Thomas More's problem is really a question of St. Thomas's understanding of natural law. So that would be this is going to be particularly interesting for you, I think, because you're religious people and we're talking about St. Thomas and his conception of law, which is really very rooted in our own Catholic tradition. Or maybe more importantly, it probably really was one of the texts, or he was one of the reflections that made us Catholics understand what the church was about and what natural law was, and how God's law intervene in how human law is rooted in God's law. Okay. What was I gonna say about that? Yeah. So a little background about Saint Thomas. Um, Saint Thomas is very important to the church, and you'll have a lot of classes with Saint Thomas in it. But he's very important to the church because he was the person by the time before Saint Thomas came, Catholicism was already established as a religion, but there were so many controversies about beliefs because basically once faith, once faith was founded, or once belief about particular doctrines right? One's doctrines were really founded on which community you belong to, right? So that's mainly like what do you believe? How human was Jesus? Was Jesus both human and divine, or did he even have a body, or was his body even physical or whatever? Those were all really mainly founded on our beliefs systems that were rooted in our communities and how our communities believe things, but they weren't very systematically argued, and they weren't very universal. I think that was the problem. That's why they had a lot of councils that would argue about a lot of things. But then, what would be the basis of the arguments? Saint Thomas was very helpful in making our religion and our church and its doctrines very systematic um, in its explanation of things, and showed us a way to justify our belief in a very systematic, metaphysical way. Okay. Because this is the reason actually why you are all taking philosophy. I think St. Thomas, this is also taking philosophy, even if I'm sure most of you don't want to really take philosophy. This is a lot because basically he realized, okay, so there's all this faith about Jesus, about the Holy Trinity, about Mary's virginity. How do we settle these things? Like how do we settle how to understand the embodiment of angels and the embodiment of Jesus? How do we settle these things? So he thought, but the way he did it was really to bring in um metaphysics, Greek metaphysics, basically Aristotle's metaphysics. So he brought in Aristotle's metaphysics to give us a picture of the universe, which was more systematic, more um not more exact, but more, yeah, just really more systematic and um more clearly argued, and founded more on really fundamental uh, assumptions that really made sense to reason. So basically, he made all our faith arguments reasonable by rooting them in a metaphysical framework, frame of arguing. Okay? So that's what he basically did. And one of the most important things he was known for was his argument or his theory of natural law. Okay? That's why we're going to study it. But from a political perspective, of course, that's our class, right? We want to understand things. I mean, the whole course is a political philosophy course. So we want to understand how to apply St. Thomas's thinking to political philosophy. So how do we do that? Okay. So, we have to understand really the whole philosophical framework of St. Thomas in order to fully understand what his theory of natural law is. Okay. So what's his foundational theory? That we live in an ordered universe. Okay. But the universe is ordered according to the summum bonum, the good itself, the highest good, the sum of all good, the fullness of good, the fullness of good there. So the fullness of good, who is a rational person, not a human, but a person. What does person mean? A being that is self-aware, that is self-conscious, that is free, that can understand what it's doing and uses its reason to understand what is the good, able to realize the good. Okay. But this person, this rational person, is the good itself, is good itself, is goodness itself. Okay. What we understand as Christians as love, diba? God is love. God is love itself. So, there's a divine intelligence and will that is wise and generous that governs the universe. So, all things came into being, all things came into existence because there is a God, there is a person who is like the fullness of good, who is goodness itself, who as goodness itself comes created in generosity and love all being. Okay, so it's like he emanates all beings. Although it's not really that clear, but it seems that this being, which who is the source of all good and all being, is not the same kind of being as the beings that exist. Okay, so although our being comes from God and our being is sustained by God's existence and His will for us to be, He is not a being like us, and He's not even the highest being, in the sense that it's like if there's a scale, God is the highest being, but he still belongs to the set of being to which we belong to. No. Okay? No. God is not a being. He just happens to be, he is the creator of, he's the being that makes beings be. He creates beings. He makes beings be. He sustains beings in being. But when they say he's the supreme being, they don't really mean that he's a being that exists like us. But God is absolute generosity, absolute love, absolute good that makes things be. Okay? Okay. So there's this divine intelligence and will that is wise and generous and governs the universe. Now all things are made to be and to be according to their good by this goodness itself. So there's this good being that let things exist. And it makes things exist because of its goodness. Like its goodness is something it shares, it's a power, it's a fullness, and it's a generous, it's an absolute generosity that makes beings come to being. Hence, their beings are guided to their own fullness by this intelligence and will. Okay. God as an intelligence and will, who is not like our intelligence and will, but is the fullness of being, but being not like our being. Okay, he's just absolute good. All, and he brings all things to their existence, and God guides all things to their fullness. Okay. What does this mean? Well, basically, St. Thomas has 5 arguments for the existence of God, right? I think some of you might know that already, but well, I won't get into it. But when he says there are 5 arguments for the existence of God, and then when he gives those 5 arguments for the existence of, I mean, one of the basic arguments for the existence of God is how all beings, even if they have no reason, um tend towards they are guided towards their good. They realize they're good, even if they're not conscious of it and they're not willing it, their own good. Okay. Like for instance, um, I was gonna give a virus as an example. I guess I can give a virus as an example. But a virus is in itself one of the most amazing, although it has killed so many of us, right? Nonetheless, it's one of the more amazing, it's not a living being, but one of the more amazing, what is it? Well, it's one of the more amazing entities that exists in this world. Because although it's not a living being, basically it's kind of like an organism that, ay, organism ba means living being? Yeah, no? No, it just means organic. But does it mean alive? Anyway, whatever. Um, But a virus, it's like a kind of a machine that just exists to replicate its DNA and to reproduce by replicating its DNA on cells, right? And that's what it does. It replicates its being on cells. So anyway, the point being, it has no intelligence. It has no intelligence to do that. It's not doing it on purpose, right? So, a virus is actually for itself, for its own good, it's guided to realize its own good um by the supreme intelligence or the supreme being. Oh no, maybe I opened the can of worms there because now you'll be thinking, oh no, did God think it was good for us to die? Oh, you take that up with God. But that's the basic theory. Any being, like a mosquito doesn't think, right? But it's one of the most well-designed animals in the sense that it can smell. I hate mosquitoes. They're my mortal enemy. But it can smell out blood anywhere it is, right? And they basically they smell it. Well, they don't really smell it, they track it by heat, right? And by heat they're able to find your blood and suck on it and find their sustenance. It doesn't think, but the fact is it's guided towards its perfection by something. And then that's the whole argument of St. Thomas. There's a divine intelligence that guides all things to their perfection. Okay. So, and that divine intelligence is known to us as God. And this God, who is the divine intelligence, guides all things to their fullness. Um, right. Yeah. So this God, who is the supreme intelligence, guides all things to their own fullness. Not because they're good for us, okay? God doesn't think of it as, I don't know what God thinks, but St. Thomas's theory is that he's saying not that God makes things act according to what's good for human beings, but he guides all things to their own perfection.
Recording in progress.
Created it, and it functions according to how God created it, because it has to follow a certain order, a certain cosmic order, which was determined by God's creativity, his action in the world. So when God created things, he created things knowingly. He had an order in mind. And we don't know that order completely, but he knows that order. He governs the world according to that order. All things that exist according to that order. And hence, there is really an eternal law that makes things exist. So this governing system is embedded in all beings, because it governs the universe, and it governs the universe according to us, and it in governing the universe, it establishes a set system for the good and for the sustenance of all beings. Okay, so this governing system is embedded in all beings, but so all beings know not all, okay, no being fully really knows this eternal law. Human beings don't really know this eternal law according to how God knows this eternal law. But even if the beings don't understand this eternal law, like planets and stars, they don't really understand an eternal law, right? They don't, because they're planets and stars. They don't think, right? But nonetheless, the eternal law is embedded in them, such that they all exist according to that eternal law, which is good, and which is makes all things come to the fullness of their good. All right, there. So things don't know the eternal law, but it's embedded in them such that they exist according to the eternal law. Okay. But human beings are special because we don't only realize the eternal law in our being, not eternal law. I mean, how would we be talking about it if we didn't know it, right? So we do know there's an eternal law. We know that but it's embedded in us. That's what makes our heart ticks. That's what makes us have children. That's what governs our reproductive system. That governs our need to eat and live and all of that. That's all embedded in us. But human beings also know the eternal law through reason. So we know that there's an eternal law, but at the same time, we also know that um that there is this eternal law that particularly calls us to live as according to the fullness of what it means to be human, which entails freedom. Okay? Because we're not mosquitoes that just follow the eternal law based on our instinct, right? We don't just follow the order of the world. No, we intuit there's an order. We intuit there's a good. We know that there's the good. Good. We understand the good, we try to articulate the good, and then we live according to the good, right? Like for instance, eat according to in a human way. That's that there's a law that we have to fulfill in our real bodily functions, right? Procreation, that's just the eternal law pushing us towards procreating and creating more of ourselves. But because we can understand that there's such a thing as the good, that the good is governed by certain laws, that the laws that govern the good are knowable to us, and then when we know it, we decide, okay, so how do we procreate, right? How do we procreate? Because like today, um really have to think about procreating so much as basically we procreate. Even then, there were considerations, right? Like who do we procreate with? Why do we procreate with them? Is it good to procreate with them? But should we even control our procreation? Because people that exist in the world and that basically we're destroying the planet, not because of our population, just because of the way we live our lives, of course. But the question is, there you can see that, yeah, sure, we're governed by the need to procreate. That's just eternal law in us. That's just the eternal law, pushing us towards certain things without us having to know it. But not only do we feel the eternal law in our bodies, we also have to understand, wait a minute, but what is the eternal law really? What is the eternal law? How do I understand the eternal law? In realizing my procreation, I have to understand what is the best way to realize my being a procreative being according to the eternal law. Do you get what I'm saying? Right? Not that you're not just acting out because the eternal law is already embedded in beings. So whether they think about it or not, they live it. But human beings, although it's embedded with us, there's a second layer where we have to think na, but what's the most human way? What is the authentically human way of realizing this? And this has a lot to do with us really, and most of the things we do actually like this, we have to understand, well, how does this eternal law really work? How do we realize it? What is its manifestation, and what is its best way? What is the best way to realize it? And that's really the question of the eternal law. Do you understand? So human beings, we don't just act according to how the eternal law pushes us. We have to understand it. And then we have to act according to how we understand it. Okay? Right? What are the things that you have to think about well when you want to realize the good in your life? Like almost everything. You have to really, truly, genuinely understand if it's the good thing or not, right? I mean, think about it. As animals don't have to think, should I eat what should I eat, when should I eat, how should I eat, right? They just do. As human beings, you have to really think about those questions, right? When should I eat? Why would you even think about when should you eat? Maybe if I eat or later, if I eat now, I'll eat with the community. If I eat now is a sacrifice for me. But then it's a sacrifice that I might want to do because I would like to build community because that's the more human thing than just to be alone and be self-centered and just do things out of convenience, right? Or what should I eat? Oh, I really like eating instinctively. I like eating sweets because, that's how human beings evolve. Whenever we try to find as much energy as we can because we burn it. But now I realize that sugar, sweet things can cause me health problems. Plus, they probably cost more. So maybe they will have an impact in my community's budget. Or what if because there's that could actually cause that might actually cause health problems to me. What if because I like that for my community? Like me, if I just like to eat the way I like to eat and then not think about my health, then what if I get sick and I have to think about my family? They'll be affected by that, right? And which is why when I eat, I have to consider what should I eat? Should I eat this way or that way? Should I be more conscious about certain things? Should I take care of my health? Those kinds of things. Um, and how much even should I eat becomes a consideration, not just because it makes me full or makes me hungry, but because ultimately maybe I'm depriving others of food. What if I like eating certain things, but I know that it's unjustly produced or that in order to acquire this food, there's a lot of carbon involved. And then it will be a one of the causes of global warming. Or what if because of this food, certain people have to be exploited in certain places? You know what I'm saying? You think it's just like it's natural. I just want to eat what I want to eat. That's also true because you may want to actually eat what you want to eat because of the way things govern us, it seems. But then there's a deeper aspect. And so not all instincts should be lived according to how you want to live them. I mean, how you instinctively want to live them. As human beings, you have to think what's the good, right? And then you have to understand what's the good, and then you act based on your understanding of the good. So it seems that we know the eternal law, but in a different way than animals, right? Because like when a lion eats a gazelle, you won't say, that lion is bad, it killed the gazelle. No, it's just acting according to the eternal law. We just don't know what necessarily we don't always know what good the eternal law brings, but the lion is acting according to eternal law. But when human beings act according to eternal law, they just can't follow their instincts because part of the eternal law is that human beings, in order to act, have to think and understand the good when they act. And then that's when they follow the eternal law. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So that's an important point to take note of. Okay. Any questions? We're okay so far. You're still understanding. Okay. Are you guys there? I hope you guys are there. Okay. Anyway, um, that said, there's such a thing though as human law in a finite state. Okay. So there's the eternal law that governs all things. That doesn't change in all times. The eternal law will always be true and always be good in eternity. Okay. In all eternity. That's just the way it is. It's the eternal law. All right. So, what could be a good example? Because eternal law could just be the law that really governs nature. Okay, the laws of nature. That's part of eternal law. Okay, that's part of eternal life. Let's things be, let's things exist according to the laws of nature. It's part of the eternal law because the whole cosmos should exist for the good of all beings. That's the eternal law. That's eternal law also. But part of eternal law are things that will never change, like um that there is only one God there. That's part of the eternal law. Okay? That's the higher kind of eternal law. There's only one God. That God is the source of all being. That's an eternal law. Okay? That um that one should not act in a way that violates the being of God or the way God gives beings into being. Because if you don't respect the existence of other beings, you're also violating the eternal law. Okay, because God created all things in such a way that all things must be appreciated and respected. And when the way you act should be in such a way that you love, that you show that an appreciation, a respect, and love for all created beings. That's eternal law. Okay. That human beings should act in such a way. Okay, so here's an eternal law. Here's the eternal. Okay, I'm gonna give you an example of eternal law. That all beings were created to love God. That's an eternal law. Okay, because God ordained that all human beings exist to love and praise God. That's an eternal law. Okay, but even if so, that's in us. That's inherently in us. Whether we acknowledge it or not, even if we don't believe in God, if that's an eternal law, it's in you. All beings, that's the law. All human beings were created to love and reverence God. That's an eternal law. Okay? How do you realize that? Particularly as a human being, how do you realize that? That's when human reason comes in. Because even if the eternal law like sort of programs us to love and reverence God, we still have to understand how to do it, right? Right? How do you love and reverence God? Did you automatically love and reverence God? Right? You have so many exercises kaya in your religious orders that help you to actually love and reverence God, right? I mean, it's not like you just say, I won't even think about it. The fact that I walk the moment I wake up in the morning and when I'm walking and I'm doing everything, I'm loving and reverencing God. No, right? You have to discern, right? Right, especially Jesuits. Oh my God, Jesuits are always discerning. They're supposed to. They don't really. But Jesuits are supposed to be discerning all the time. Am I loving and praising God by this particular act? Right? Why do they have to think that? Why do they have to keep discerning? Because although the eternal law, which is all beings must love and all human beings must love and reverence God. That's the law. It's embedded in us, but we still have to understand it in order to realize it. Do you get it? Do you get the difference between just having a natural, having an eternal law, love and reverencing God, to obey your superiors? That's or do your daily prayer and do your examen. That's one way of loving and reverencing God, right? Or act with indifference towards beings unless they lead you towards the love of God. Oh, that's not an eternal law. The eternal law is that you must love and reverence God. But the fact that you think about, oh, I have to act in such a way that I won't love and reverence things. I won't I won't I will only always love things in relation if I will always value things most that lead me to the love of God. That's already like a human reason. That's human reason interpreting the natural law which is inside my spirit. Right? There. That's what he means. Okay. All right. That said, there's such a thing as human law in a finite state. Okay. Now we're just gonna skip here to the fact that okay, so there's the eternal law that governs all things. Planets, insects, human beings. It's all there, embedded in them, leading them towards their fullness. All beings just automatically act according to that eternal law, and they're guided by that eternal law. Human beings not so, because we have freedom and we have to still, it is just that, okay, the eternal law is embedded in us, but we have to decide and discern how to realize it. Okay? So we need to use our reasons. Okay. Now, the thing about human beings is that we know the world in a finite way. We sense that there's an eternal law. Sometimes we can articulate what it means, but always in a finite way. We cannot know it completely, especially as an eternal being, because only God knows the eternal law according to the eternal law. Okay? Creatures just know the eternal law as an instinct. We know the eternal law. We can understand the eternal law, but only based on our limitedness and our finitude. We're finite beings eh. So we don't really know the eternal law as eternal. We only always know the eternal law as finite beings given our certain situations. Okay? That's why, for instance, the Muslims understand the eternal law according to their certain customs and faiths and beliefs. And even usually depends on what kind of Muslim you are, right? And from what region. And it's, you can't say, oh, because only one kind of Muslim understands the eternal law, although they'd like to say that. Just like the way Catholics want to say, oh, only we know the eternal law according to the, we would like to think that. But no, the fact is we all know the eternal law from our finitude, our finiteness. And then usually we interpret it according to our own customs, which are finite. Okay? It's all finite. Okay. So human beings know the world in a finite way. We intuit the eternal, but we can't know it completely, especially as if we were eternal beings. There, because we are not eternal beings. We are finite beings. Okay. Okay. So Thomas' theory of law reflects finitude. Sorry, typographical error. That Thomas's theory of law reflects finitude and imperfection because he understands that the world is governed by a cosmic order, and the cosmic order is determined by the eternal law, the infinite system that just lets it exist and determines how it exists and shapes its existence according to the eternal, the unchanging eternal, always true. Okay? But since human beings live in this world and act in this world and still always understand things from their limited way, he understands that when he discusses natural law, when he discusses the laws that human beings try to live and realize in their lives, he understands that this eternal law will always manifest as finite, limited, and particular interpretations of the eternal. Okay? There's always a finite and limited understanding of eternal laws by human beings in their own finite way. Although the laws don't change, our interpretation of the law is very particular to our own circumstances, to our own needs, to our own geographies, to our tradition, to our experiences, to our history. Okay. Just as a simple way to understand it, religious people, is God eternal? Yes, right? I mean, you guys you believe in God, right? For what? Okay, first, let's check. Everyone believes in God in the room, right? Yes. Okay. So, you do it believe in God. That is the God you believe in eternal and infinite? Yes, right? God is eternal and infinite. So why are there like at least 3 religious orders in this room now? Right? There are at least three, right? Jesuits, Carmelites, and Augustine. I think, but basta, right? There are at least three. So why do we have to have so many religious orders? If there's only one eternal God, why do we have so many religious orders? They're all gonna praise the one eternal God, right? So why do you have so many different orders? The orders of Saint Benedict, the order of well, whose order is Mount Carmel? Elijah. No, but he didn't really say it. But then why is there the order of Saint Ignatius and Saint Francis? Why? Because there's many gods. Or think about it more this way. Why are there Muslims? Just because they're wrong? Why are there people who believe in God who are Muslims, who are Buddhists, who are Hindu? Are they all wrong? Are Catholics the only right people? Or why are there so many Christianities? You know, right? Because there's the Catholics and there's the Anglicans. So the people will say, Catholic, Anglicans, the same thing. Still, why are there Catholics? Why are there Anglicans? Why are there evangelists? The evangelicals, right? Are they all wrong? So we're the only right ones. But even us who are the only right ones have so many different varieties of orders. Okay, so do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, just look at Opus Dei and the Jesuits. You already see that it's like they have such different ways of understanding. But they're understanding what? The one eternal God, the one infinite eternal God. Now, are they all wrong? No. They're particular, if they are right, then they are particular expressions of the infinite eternal, forever true, unchanging reality of God's love and creativity. These are all expressions of the simple human beings are created to love and reverence God. And all these religions are human interpretations of the one eternal law. All human beings are love and reverence God. There's only one God. Why are there so many ways to love and reverence that God? Because human beings are finite, and their understanding of that eternal law is based on their history, their own temperaments, their own traumas, their own shared traumas, their own shared experiences, the way they went through history and what they had to suffer and what they had and the way they created their cultures. All of these things, these are all finite realizations of the human being's existence in the world. Because of those, the way our being in the world is shaped by our finitude, we have very particular understanding of reality. And it could actually be all expressing one eternal law. All our religions are probably all expressing one eternal law, the love and reverence of God. But there's different ways of realizing it because our ways are particular and finite. Okay? All our ways are particular and finite. So, that God created the cosmos according to his infinite and eternal wisdom. The whole universe exists according to God's infinite and eternal wisdom. That's it. There's just one universe based on God's eternal infinite wisdom. So, but so everything basically exists realizing that, except human beings. Okay? Because also human beings, but in a different way. Because everything else just realizes it by existing and existing the way they are. Because they have no freedom eh. No, they're not having to decide, how will I rotate today? I'm a planet, diba? No, they just do it. Okay? The human beings, they're different, I guess, because we have to love God and we just don't have to exist. So we have to understand how to act with freedom in freedom, in relation to that eternal law. Okay, two things: freedom and finitude. We're free, but we're finite and we're imperfect. So being free, finite, and imperfect, how do we realize what God's law is according to that finitude and imperfection? Can we realize God's law? Can we realize our existence according to the eternal law with our finitude and our freedom? The answer is yes, because we have reason. A reason can understand the eternal law. Okay? Right. So when he discusses natural law and human law, so there are two kinds of laws which we'll get into later. But these are human laws. I mean, these are how human beings experience the eternal law. We experience the eternal law as natural law, and we experience the eternal law as human law. And he understands that we are all subject to the eternal, although we experience the eternal law as natural law and human law, and we obey it as natural law and human law. And he says that that's because we're finite beings, and we're finite, we're imperfect, and we're free. And we have reason. And this is why we experience the eternal law as bearing as natural law and human law. Okay? Some of us know the eternal law more. That's why we can follow it better. And maybe those are the founders of your orders. They're probably the people who recognize the eternal law more deeply. And some of us don't. Like, not to judge anyone, but I think Donald Trump really doesn't know the eternal law in any way whatsoever. And I think maybe President Duterte has a very hard time understanding that there's an eternal law and he's not the founder of it. That kind of thing. So some people are just farther from the eternal law and have less awareness of it, and some people have more awareness of it. Those who have more awareness of it live more meaningful human lives and are more creative in the world and bring goodness to the world. Those who don't and act contrary to it bring suffering and destruction. Because they don't follow the order. There's an order that makes things flourish. There's an order that makes things come to fruition, right? So they don't understand that order. So when they act, they go against that order. So they're more destructive to things, right? Like for instance, why do you think there's global warming? Do you think there's global warming because the human beings who created the systems that we exist with and perpetuate it understand the eternal law? Far from it, I would say, right? Right? Because if people understood the eternal law and lived according to the eternal law, then there wouldn't be global warming. Unless you guys believe that global warming is caused by nature. Okay? So guys, there is really a natural warming, okay? The earth goes through cycles of cold and warmth. That's why there was an ice age anyway. That's natural. Okay. But when they're talking about global warming, they're talking about the rise in temperature that really just started to happen starting the industrial revolution, and it has never happened ever in the history of the earth, especially before human beings, that the temperature of the whole earth rose as quickly as it did and caused as much destruction as it is today. And that's why they know global warming has a human cause. Okay. Now, do you think people who understood the eternal order and the eternal law could cause something like global warming? I doubt it, right? I hope you doubt it too. But I doubt it. Because if you live according to the eternal law, why would we even cause global warming? How could we even have caused it if we were just acting according to the eternal law, right? So there. So human beings can contradict the eternal law by the way we act. By the way we act. And that's why it's important to understand the eternal law. But we don't understand the eternal law as eternal law. We only understand the eternal law as human. I mean, we do understand that it exists, right? We understand that it exists. But I think when we act, we act according to how we understand the eternal law is in human terms. That you understand now what I'm saying. All right. Yes, you understand what I'm saying. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Anyway, sorry. I see only the faces of the four people who are on cam. Thanks, guys. Hey, thanks, John, Paul, Chan, Nico, and Luan for staying on camera. Um, but no, it's oh hello, Felix. It's okay. I wasn't hinting for you to turn on your camera. Don't be guilty. But that's good. Oh, now Bian's back. No, but Bian was originally on anyway. But sorry, now I made you all feel guilty. I wasn't making you feel guilty. I was just about to say, oh, and Mark, of course, he's always been there. And now Etawa's there. Anyway, no, I was just gonna say that when we're face to face, now that I'm lecturing, that's why I was laughing because I can already imagine your faces, how we are when we're face to face. Because when you're confused or you're thinking, I can already imagine your faces. And I'm thinking, I wonder if they have that confused or puzzled or struggling face right now. Because I can only see four of them. But now I see six. But anyway. No, but don't feel guilty about that, guys. I was just saying that I'm wondering if you're getting it. Anyway, we'll if you have questions, don't be shy to interrupt me if it's confusing to you. Because a lot of people have read natural law kasi they think natural law is the law of nature. It's not. But I'm gonna ask you that in the test, so you have to think about that. I'm not gonna answer it. Maybe I will actually while I'm talking, so you catch the answer. But that's one question of the test. Okay. Anyway, um, so um, so we need laws for the finite state. So here is why we need laws for the state. Okay, guys, I'm really just putting layer upon layer of bricks until we build the whole argument. Okay. So these are just like layer by layer. I'm building it up. Okay. So we need laws for the finite state. Why? Because human beings know the world in a finite way. So we intuit the eternal, but we can't really know it completely, especially as eternal beings, because we're not. Now, Thomas's theory of law reflects human finitude and imperfection in relation to the eternal. When he discusses natural law and human law, he understands that we're all subject to the eternal law, but some of us are more open to attune to it than others. So there has to be a system that somehow at least orients us towards realizing the eternal law. Okay? So, not all, it's just like how, your orders are, right? Like not everyone is so advanced in holiness or as holy as everyone else in your orders, right? I'm sure I'm sure you have brothers and priests who are truly more holy and truly more religious and truly more oriented towards the holy and realizing the holy than others, right? But the fact that there are laws, the constitutions and the constitutions and the customs of your order, but the fact that they're there already orients you towards realizing the good in even if you are like not as holy as Father so and so, right? Because it's probably true that Father Provincial is not anywhere close to the holiness of this other father who nobody even makes administrator because they don't really trust him to run the order. But nonetheless, he's probably the holiest one. He's probably the one who really knows, who's really closest to understanding the holiness, human laws of your orders somehow make sure that everyone's oriented towards the eternal, right? Why? Because we are all finite beings and we kind of need guidance in order to realize the holy. Okay. Sorry, wrong way. So now we come to the state. Okay. Anyway, those are the laws. Okay. So what I've been hinting at before you go to the state, what I've been talking about is that So the whole universe is governed by God. And God governs because God governs all things. So this is, imagine the cosmos as a state, right? And God is the ruler. And he has to rule things according to a law. And that's the eternal law. Okay. Now, I've been hinting that human beings are the only beings that understand the law of God as from their finitude, from a finite perspective. But this finite perspective even has two kinds of law. One is the natural law, and the other one is the human law. Now, what's the difference between that? Later, what's the difference? What's the important thing to know now is that human law and finite law are limited, particular understandings of the eternal law of God. Okay? That. So what's a finite state about? So it's here we're gonna first have to get into the state according to Aristotle. And it's really simple. The state is the perfect community in which we realize our common good. Actually, the term is the state is the only communal structure capable of helping us realize the good life or the happy life or the life of human excellence. Okay, so Aristotle says all human beings are oriented towards happiness. That's their telos. Every human being must live the whole telos, the point of existing of human beings, the whole telos of human beings is happiness. Happiness is realized when we live a good life or a life that allows us to realize happiness. And we're really, that happiness is achieved when we realize our human excellence. Okay? The fullness of what it means to be human. So we accept its authority. That's why we accept the authority of the state over us, because we realize that only through the state can we realize our good in the fullest sense. What does that mean? Because a state is a community in which we realize our communal good, right? A family is a community in which we realize our common good. But it can't provide us with everything. A family needs, you know what they say, it takes a village to raise a child, right? That saying probably came from our cultures, right? I'm sure, and that's true, because what we realize is that a family alone, even a nuclear family, cannot raise a child. So we need extended families to raise us, right? But then even the extended families cannot provide all our needs, you know. So so we need so we need to have a community. But what we realize is that communities themselves seem incomplete, because although community can, provide certain needs still have to be sourced in other communities. Plus, yeah, we need, a bigger, we need a state in the sense of population of a certain variety of people who are able to really who have different talents and different capabilities and even different interests and different senses of different ways of doing things, that we need this larger community that embraces many communities, such so that our needs are truly realized, particularly with regard to structure and authority. The state can provide like that, on a big scale, where there are different communities that are providing each other's needs in mutual trade and all of that. Only a state can protect. The only a state has authority to coordinate our movements, right? Because that's what the state does. It coordinates between different communities with different interests, and then it mediates, and then it protects, and then it um yeah, and it even imposes certain things for the good of the common, and then only the state can actually even see the common good, because then each community is focused on its own good, right? But then each community needs each other. So that's why the state is the perfect community in which we realize our communal good. It's the only communal structure capable of realizing the good life because it's the only communal structure that can coordinate a larger communal structure where all people involved are responsible for each other in very meaningful ways um, that will help us all be able to realize our potential happiness as human beings. And our happiness depends on, of course, being able to um our happiness depends on our ability to acquire our basic needs, but also our happiness depends, I think, on having a community where people are able to care for each other and ensure that everyone lives in safety and mutual cooperation. So you need a state for that. Okay. So human laws exist to order the police. Human laws, okay? That's another kind of law. So in order to realize the common good, we need laws to order our relatedness and our behavior. So okay, so you have a police, right, where everyone has to cooperate and help each other, right? But a police is just composed of people, period. You don't really choose which people are part of your police, right? They're just born into it. We're not Plato, remember, where we even control who mates with whom. This is Saint Thomas, and he's not like Plato, who has a very controlled. Saint Thomas recognizes that states are composed of different people with different temperaments and different levels of virtuousness, or not state. Not everyone is a caring person in the state. Not everyone in a state is capable of thinking of others and working mainly for others. Not everyone has magis or cura personalis, right, in a state. Diba? Not everyone. Some people do, some people don't. Okay? And the people who do are probably more virtuous, can be seen as more fully realized human beings. People who don't could even have the tendency to be destructive, even have the tendency to cause trouble and all of that. Okay, so in order to realize the common good, we need the laws in order to order how we relate to each other and how we behave. Because not everyone is fully virtuous. And not everyone believes in the same, not everyone necessarily believes in shares the same understanding of what's virtuous and what's not virtuous. Right? Not everyone shares that understanding. Not everyone agrees on what the good is. Not everyone agrees on how human beings should behave towards other people. We could actually have people who think, even in the majority, who think in a very selfish or maybe destructive or self-centered way, right? So that's possible in a community. And that's why you have to have human laws. Human laws should just basically, the point of human laws is to order us in such a way that we at least are ordered towards lawfulness, like cooperation, solidarity, mutual respect, so that, and to some extent some mutual trust. Human laws are not there to shape us to become the best people. Okay? Human laws are laws made in a state to make sure that the state will function at least in the best way in order to realize human happiness. And to have that, you basically need people who understand the laws, who obey the laws, who cooperate with each other, who respect authority, who are able to understand the common good, and who are able to participate in creating or fostering the human the common good, the shared good. You know what I'm saying? But the state and the human laws are not necessarily there to exist in such a way that everyone becomes a paragon of virtue. Okay? So human laws are, in a sense, human laws are supposed to human laws are supposed to reflect the eternal law. Okay? To an extent, human laws are supposed to reflect the eternal law because after all, the eternal law somehow guides us towards cooperation, mutual trust, solidarity, mutual care and help, and all of those things that allow us to take care of each other. That's also reflective of the eternal law. But see, the thing is, it's like the eternal law is the most perfect, the fullness of all things, right? And if you can rationally understand the eternal law as an eternal law, then you're God or Jesus. Okay? Because then you're the same level of eternal understanding of the eternal thing. Okay? But human laws are like trying to understand, trying to translate the eternal laws in such a way that even non-virtuous people and non-believers and even people who are unaware of the eternal law can actually exist in such a way that they're governed to cooperate with each other. That's a human law. It's not there to make us virtuous. It's not there to make us perfect human beings. It's not there to make us good human beings. It's just there to make sure we don't kill each other and hopefully to cooperate with each other in such a way that we were able to help each other become more fully realized human beings. You understand? So like the eternal laws, their human laws is like the lowest level of realization of the eternal law according to reason. Okay, so it's just like we're like, okay, we need to realize the eternal law, but we need to realize the eternal law. But for not everyone who shares the same level of virtuousness or goodness, but just enough for people to cooperate with each other. Let's have laws. We need laws like that everyone can understand and accept and cooperate with in a state where there are different people doing different things with different beliefs. And that's what we can see as a way to realize our fullness as human beings. I'm sorry, our community, which is the which is the state, which is the perfect community to realize the shared good. So in order to realize the common good, we need the laws to order our relatedness and our behavior, not to become the most moral people who live perfectly according to the laws of God, but to be the kind of people who can work for each other in building a collective in which we can realize our happiness. Okay? It's another level. Okay. So more precisely, okay, so this is the more precise thing of what we were talking about. So the end of human life is happiness in the finite world. Okay? Genuine human happiness can only be achieved in a state which is the perfect community. Perfect because only in the common good, in a state which can arrange for the common good, can we achieve genuine eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is happiness. So only reason can know our eudaimonia because only reason understands what is the happiness, what is the common good that will bring about happiness for human beings. So reason must direct the will whose end is to realize acts that lead to the realization of the good. So laws are there as reason's way of creating systems that will guide the will towards the end to which it realizes the good. Okay, so there. So, it's our way of it's our way of understanding the eudaimonia, the shared good of human beings, how to realize that good. Reason understands that okay, so we have this community, and this community exists to help us realize our shared or common good. How do we realize that common good based on this community? Oh, well, we have laws that structure that. It will structure our systems, it will structure our behavior, but these laws that will structure are not really there to make us the best people. It's there to make sure that we somehow can create systems of cooperation and solidarity so that we can help each other realize our shared good. Okay. Still participating in the eternal laws, right? You can see how it still participates in the eternal law, but just in a way enough that people realize a shared communal existence that will lead to their shared good. All right. Okay. Any questions? No? Still? Nice. I'm guessing that no one has questions because the lesson is so understandable and I'm such a great lecturer. Or it's so complicated, no one even can understand where to start asking questions. I think it's the latter. But maybe by next class, we'll have questions. Okay. Oh, wait, but someone raised something in the chat. Okay. So Mark is asking, wait, Mark, I'll transfer. Is it possible for a society to function solely on natural law without the need for specific human law? No. Because, wow, that's a good question, Mark. Anyway, maybe you will natural law ha. Okay, I haven't defined natural law, but basically natural law is our way of understanding the eternal law as it leads us to the good, as it leads us to human excellence. Okay, so that's higher than human law. That's why no, it's not possible because natural law is really most known and best articulated by people who are actually living lives according to the good. Not everyone's living lives according to the good. And this is the great thing about human law. And it's amazing because the ones who formulated this whole idea of human law are Aquinas and Saint Augustine. And they said we live in states where people are not the best human beings, maybe, not that we're judging them, but it's just that different people have different levels of virtue. What will we build a state that's the most excellent, like Plato? What do we do with the people who are not? Or will we just have to wait till everyone is so absolutely excellent before we can build a polis? They say no, we just have to build a polis the way it is, and it's really composed of people who are imperfect and even not that virtuous, if they're virtuous at all. But can we build a society where people can cooperate at least in such a way that we realize our common good so that we can realize our happiness? Yes. That's why it's not really possible for a society to function so solely on natural law without the need for specific human laws. That's the answer to that one. But Mark, one possible example though of societies that exist. Okay. What would be ideally hindi in real life maybe. But ideally, what would be that what society would be that kind of society that exists according to the natural law? Again, your congregations, right? Because your congregations are supposed to exist not just because people want to cooperate. No, you're supposed to exist in such a way that you realize your excellence. Of course, looking around in this room, I don't know if there's such excellent people. No, I'm kidding. But you know what I'm saying, right? No, of course you are. But you know what? I won't say who. The other day, but this might get into your head, but never mind. I'm gonna say it anyway. Because I'm in a good mood. No, I don't have to see you. No, I'm kidding. No, but the other day, I came out of the room. After our last class, the last class we had, I went out of the room. I was so happy because we had such a good class, and we always have. Well, for me, I'm not saying for you. Just talking about myself. I'm always happy, like, oh, we have such a good class because I have such good students. And um, so I saw one of the Jesuit superiors. I mean, really one of the high up Jesuit superiors. And then I'm like, Father, I'm so happy. Sabi ko, Father, hey, you're here. He called me and says, Gus Rodriguez, why are you here? And I'm like, oh, because I'm serving the society. I'm teaching your students. And then I said, I love it. I love teaching in LSD because they're such good people. And then and he said, huh, right. he made that face. Okay. He didn't really say that, but he made that face. Then I'm like, what does father know? Because this father who I was talking to before he became this one of the higher ups of the Jesuits used to be one of the formators of the philosophers in the society. So I'm wondering, what does he know? Are you people giving him such a hard time and saying, maybe my students aren't always the best. Maybe they're just nice to me. No, but anyway, my point is, but you guys are supposed to be some of the best people. Not the most virtuous. I mean, not perfect people or not holy people, but at least people who are seeking the eternal, right? I mean, what the heck are you going to be priests for? Shame on you if you're not, right? So yeah, for sure, you people are there, and you people in this room, I mean, in your congregations, all of you are seeking the eternal. And then, so if you look at the laws of your constitution, the fundamental ones, these are natural law, articulations of the eternal law. All right? So, sorry again, all my other brothers. I'm gonna have to use the Jesuits as an example. That's all I know, okay? I'm sorry. No, okay, I know Carmelites too, but I don't know the constitution of the Carmelites. But let's just go to okay. Since we're online, see, that's why I love online because I can just look for first principles and foundation, and I not don't have to memorize it. Wait, okay, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna show you lang what's the this is so funny. But let's do this. Wait. Is this right? Oh, oh wow, you can even share it with you, diba? But this is the literal translation. Um, this is um this is kind of new. It's the literal translation. It's not so poetic, but anyway, it's the first thing I saw. Wait, let's see what's a nicer one. Never mind. This is the American translation, so it's very literal. Okay. But anyway, look at that. God created human beings to praise, reverence, and serve God. And by doing this to save their souls, that's eternal law. Okay? That's just how it is in being. Okay? God created all other things on the face of the earth to help fulfill this purpose. That's also eternal law. That's just how it is. That's what makes beings be. Okay? Now this is natural law. From this it follows that we are to use the things of this world only to the extent that they help us to this end. And we ought to rid ourselves of the things in this world to the extent that they get in the way of this end. What's the end? To love and reverence God, to praise and reverence God, right? So what's the eternal law? God created human beings to praise, reverence, and serve God. And by doing this, to save their souls. Because that's just how the cosmos is structured. God created all other things on the face of the earth to help fulfill this purpose. That's just how strings are structured. That's eternal law. Okay? Natural natural law is this. From this it follows that we are to use the things of this world only to the extent that they help us to this end. Why? Because human beings, having understood the eternal law, understand that this is the law for human beings. We have to follow this. It's not just embedded in us. Reason tells us this is how we're supposed to act. That we use things in this world only to serve, that they help us to this end, and we ought to rid ourselves of the things of this world to the extent that they get in the way of this end. And for this, it's necessary to make ourselves indifferent to all created things as much as we are able, so that we do not necessarily want health rather than sickness, etc., etc. That's all natural. That's all natural law. That's just Saint Ignatius saying, if you use your reason to understand that eternal law that we're supposed to love and reverence God, this is how you're supposed to act. Right? There. Okay. So, what is a human law in this case? Well, a human law is, you must, when your superior gives you an assignment and he says that he's giving an assignment under obedience, do not question it. Is that an eternal law? No. It's just an interpretation. Is it a natural law? Not really, because that law is just made for not the most perfect beings. It's just there as a particular kind of law to regulate communal existence. Right? But from this, it follows that we are to use things of this world only to the extent that they help us to this end. That's not just to regulate human existence so that we can cooperate with each other. That's oriented towards you to realize excellence. Excellence. Right? Not just being with each other in such a way that we can cooperate and we can find happiness. No, this is like, if you want to be a full human being, that you follow that, you live that way. That's why it's natural law. Do you understand? Right? Now, so Mark's question, di ba Mark, even if you have that natural law, from this it follows, you still, as a society, like kunyari, the Jesuits, they still have to have specific laws that tell them how much, that if in order to, your formation must include 4 kinds of trials, right? That's not natural law. That's just human law telling you how you can form people in a society with specific ways of shaping them. In fact, the people nga you're going through the trials, you're not even sure if they're the most virtuous people. That's why you're putting them through the trials. Not even if the most virtuous people, but even if they're the people who can realize the natural law according to how Saint Ignatius formulated it. The trials are there to see if you can live those natural laws, right? But the natural law and the human law, so different. But they're both extracted from the eternal law. But the natural law is higher. Okay? So guys, now you understand what natural law is. So thanks for that question, Mark. That made it easier to explain the difference between natural law and human law. Natural law. So that when people say, what's the natural law? Oh, you look at nature and see how people live and how animals act. That's not natural law. That's just the law of nature. That's maybe the answer. Okay, think about it. Now, anyway, yeah, but it's just how, like, so when you say, like when you say, human beings, when they're, that homosexuality violates God's law, because it violates the laws of nature, that's not a good argument. It's not. Because you're just arguing according to the laws of nature. But actually, human excellence is based on natural law, which means, is like, for instance, homosexuality, is it violating the order of the eternal good? Not is it violating the order of the physical body, right? Because it's a I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I don't want to get into that discussion. I don't know. You guys decide. It's your problem. I have no problems with it. But my point is that when you talk about it, you shouldn't use natural law and say, look at nature. Bakit may bakla ba dyan? Ganyan. That's what the stupid people argue. Actually, you know what? The answer is yes. Ang dami. Ang dami in the law, but your question is not, does it occur in nature, but is it natural law? Because natural law doesn't mean the law of nature. Diba? Okay. Anyway, let's discuss that some more now. Okay. So anyway, right? So are you guys getting it? Anyway, the definition of the law. So law is an ordinance of reason for the common good. It's made by her. Actually, since it's St. Thomas and the church, it's made by him who has care of the community. So this is just a general definition of law, okay? Laws are ordinance of reason for the common good. Okay. These are basically human laws. They're made by the person who has care of the community. They are made by people who have care for the community, the ones who have authority, because they have the right, the authority, and the duty to impose laws that can be enforced. So St. Thomas is basically saying, look, a law, a human law is this, okay? It's an ordinance of reason. Reason makes ordinances so that we realize the common good. It's only legitimate if it's made by a person who actually has the authority to make those laws. Who has the authority to make those laws? Who has the one who cares for the community. Okay? And it has to be promulgated. Okay. Now, of course, this person has the care of the community in the sense also that their reason bears the communal reason. Somehow they represent the community and the community shared understanding of the good, right? And the law has to be promulgated because people cannot follow a law which they don't know. You know why? Because it's not the eternal law. It's not inscribed in their being. Get it? Eternal law, you don't need to know the eternal law, at least for animals. But human beings have to know it in order to realize it. So unlike the natural law or the eternal law, if it's not inscribed, people don't know it. So it's not formulated in a way that all people of various levels of excellence, and finally, it is formulated in a way that even people of various levels of excellence and virtue can follow it. So that for him is the human law. Okay. That's his definition of the human law. That the law is an ordinance of reason. Reason still, right? Because human beings don't act unless they use the reason. So it's an ordinance of reason that is enacted for the common good. Who makes it? The persons who have authority, the right and authority and the duty to impose rules that can be enforced. Okay? Otherwise, if you don't have authority, you're just giving advice, right? Like me, I can make laws for the class because I have the authority to do it. I can impose fines, right? Like my law is you can't cut more than so many times, for instance. That's the law. And then what's the fine? You fail the class, right? I'm not saying, don't worry, I won't do it. But like, because you're adults, I don't care. I mean, I care, but it's up to you if you do it or not, come to class or whatever, I'm treating you like adults. Anyway, but what if I'm just one of your classmates and I have no authority and I tell everyone, hey guys, do not cut. Okay. Otherwise what? Well, otherwise we'll fail. So what are you doing? Are you actually able to impose any penalties? No. What are you doing? You're giving advice. So you're not making a law. You're just giving advice. Only people who have authority and the duty to impose rules that can be enforced are the ones who make the law. Okay? That's his point. That's so that because he's defining the law in how it's practiced, and that's just how it's practiced. Laws are made using reason for the common good by those who have the care of the community, and they make it. Then those who care for the community have the duty and the authority and the right to make those laws. Okay. Nadim says Aristotle mentioned about the telos of man to be eudaimonia or happiness. Yeah. Is this the same with Aquinas' eternal law? Yes. That's because it's the very being of human person. Okay. So that's the eternal law, and based on that eternal law, it is actually in a sense it can be translated into a natural law, like how that human beings ought to realize their happiness according to their eudaimonia, which is their excellence or human, that will lead to their flourishing. Yes, that is an eternal law. Okay. And Thomas recognizes that, of course, because he lifts all these things from Aristotle anyway, right? Okay. And then the idea of being propagated again is how you see when he talks about human law, that are designed to realize the common good, but are not necessarily designed to reach absolute human. Okay. And unlike the eternal law, it's not inscribed in our being. Diba? So it's formulated in a way that all people of various levels of excellence can follow it. Okay? Right. So let's go now to the kinds of the laws. The kinds of laws. So there's the eternal law, there's the natural law, there's the human law. Okay. We already talked about the human law, and actually we already went through it, but I kind of just laid out the foundations. Now let's talk about it just specifically. I think we can go quickly with this one set. Okay. So, wait, sorry. So the eternal law are the laws set by God to govern the universe. It moves all things to their perfection and is followed by all things as they realize their being. Intuitively or automatically, all things move toward their perfection and partake of the eternal law. So the same is true for human beings. However, the rational aspect is capable of knowing the eternal law. So this makes a realization of the eternal law more perfect if we realize the eternal law, because we're not just following it according to instinct, we're actually choosing to following it and orienting our freedom towards realizing the eternal law, which is the whole point of the first principles of foundation. It's showing us how this is the eternal law. Human beings, in order to become perfect, must orient their freedom to realize this eternal law fully. Okay. So the natural law refers to the participation of the human person in the eternal law through reason. Which is why, thus, human beings, for the human perfection, they must love things only in so much as they orient us towards the love and reverence of God. That's the natural law, because it refers to the participation of the human person in the eternal law through reason. So we understand the eternal law. So we translate that into a law of action. That reason tells us what to do with our freedom and how to realize our freedom. Now, because the eternal law is inscribed in our reason, we are able, sorry, that's typographical. We're able to recognize it and live according to it because we know it. We're capable of knowing it. But you know what, though? In order to understand the eternal law and actually live it, in order to realize the eternal law and actually live it, we have to have a level of excellence in our reason, in such a sense, in a way that our reason is used according to its highest capabilities. In other words, that it is really a reason oriented towards, that's open to the truth. Socrates kind of reason. A reason oriented towards the truth, the good, the beautiful. So if you have reason oriented towards the good, the true, the beautiful, if it's trained to be able to think in such a way that opens to the eternal, if it's trained in such a way that it can orient the will towards the eternal, then reason is more capable of understanding natural law, and the human being with that kind of reason is more capable of realizing the natural law. So it depends really, the capacity to realize the natural law is so dependent on our capabilities to actually be the kinds of human beings who can understand the eternal, who can open to the eternal and orient our freedom towards realizing the eternal. You know what I'm saying? That's why not everyone can know the natural law. I mean, it's natural law. But I mean, no, not everyone, no, everyone can know the natural law. That's wrong. I didn't mean that. But everyone can know the natural law. But it's just like not everyone can know it. There are levels of knowing the natural law because it's really hard to know the natural law because it needs a certain attunement, openness, and participation in God's presence in it, you know. And of course, not everyone's like that. You need a certain level of virtue, of intellectual virtue, of virtuousness, as in ethics and being a good person, being a loving person, being a person oriented towards the eternal. It takes a lot to know the natural law, even if it seems natural, right? That's the irony of the word natural law. It seems so easy to know because it's natural. Just look at no, look at nature. No, it's really a higher kind of law that you own, that you know it if you have a certain level of intellectual intellectual openness. Not even just smart. It's not a question of being smart. It's a question of intellectual openness and virtue and orientedness towards the holy and the good. 'Di ba? Not everyone, you know, a lot of people who are really super smart, right? But who have no orientation towards the holy and the good. How would they know the natural law? I mean, they could because it's not, all, we are all capable. But really to know it in its depth, that's different. That's another level. Okay. And then human law, from the postulate that is the natural law. So if you know the natural law, what it calls you to do, practical reason. So natural law is really more the cooperation of um theoretical reason in the sense of theoria, the capacity to open to the transcendent, and then practical reason is the reason that realizes ends in this world, to realize the ends that we need to realize in this world. So human law basically knows natural law, and then it translates from natural law, the ones who make the human law translate, okay, so if this is really how things ought to be, then how do we make it a practical thing? No, like everyday rules, um normal kinds of laws which orient behavior, right? So how often should they have apostolate work, right? How should we conduct how should we conduct meal times? When are visiting days and who can visit? Those are all human laws based on eternal law, right? For your orders, right? What about owning stuff? That's really important. Like, okay, when they say, okay, everyone can have things that they need for studying, and they own it, and they don't own it, it belongs to the community, but it's for personal use. So when something is assigned to you, it's for personal use, but it must be considered in such that it belongs to the community, right? So your laptop is for your personal use, but it doesn't belong to you, right? That's a human law. You know what it's trying to realize? The that you should really be detached from all things unless it leads to the love and reverence of God, which is the natural law. Do you get it, right? So that's what human law is. It's a practical reason making more practical determinations of particular matters in the topics. How should we how should we what should be our policy about language where the mass is conducted? That's natural law. I mean, that's human law, 'di ba? So human law is reason determining from the postulates of natural law what ought to be in particular situations, either as conclusions from postulates or as the conclusions from postulates. Remember, like the natural law is must love all things and appreciate them only today. That's the question. Reverence are created to love and reverence God. And then you kind of must treat things with indifference if they don't lead you to the love of God. Okay, so how do we treat computers or cars or books? You know, things like that. Or clothes. How about clothes? Are our seminarians supposed to own clothes? 'Di ba? What kind of clothes are they allowed to buy? Maybe because if they're allowed to buy certain kinds of clothes, it won't lead them to the love and reverence of God. You know? Those are the postulate is you're supposed to everything you do, you're supposed to be indifferent to what doesn't lead you to the love of reference love and deferent your love and praise of God. But the natural law, the human law is okay, so what does that mean when we buy clothes? There, see? There. Now, translate that to a state, right? So there. So although the problem with the state though, not a problem really, but the thing though with the state is it doesn't share an insight into the eternal law. Sometimes it doesn't even understand the natural law. Not like can you imagine your lawgivers wherever you come from as people who have a good sense of the natural law? Not really. If you hear them talk in the parliament, for instance, you don't really think these people know natural law. But as much as possible, they're translating how do we make practical guidelines particular determinations of particular matters so that we can live in cooperation and solidarity. Okay. So it's not a theoretical and eternal understanding of all things, but a practical and particular determination. Okay. So which brings us to the question, why do we need laws therefore? Well, laws are needed for human beings to be led to their good and to their genuine happiness. Without laws, we won't really know what our good is, and we won't be able to realize our genuine happiness. So human laws exist because people need to to be bound to the good. Okay? Whatever laws, the natural law or the human laws. Okay. The laws are there because they bind us to the good. The human laws are there in order to allow us to live in a practical way according to the good. The natural laws are our understanding of the eternal laws in order to realize them in our lives. Okay. But really, the natural laws are principles, more more postulates from the ah basta the most basic thing is the eternal law. That's the most basic principle. And then the natural law is like a postulate postulate based on the fundamental principle. And then the human law is the practical realization of the natural law. Okay. Ideally, can you make natural laws that skip being laws that skip the eternal law? Yes, of course. Especially when human beings are not really, when the ones making the laws and the ones who have the authority are not particularly attuned to the eternal and to the natural laws. You know, not everyone is attuned to the natural laws. And if you make those people in charge of things, then of course they will make a lot of laws that could actually go contrary to the natural law. Okay. But ideally, the natural law is rooted in the eternal law, and the human law is the practical realization or formulation of a particular way of acting in a particular situation based on the natural law. Okay. Medel is asking, Are natural laws applicable to everyone? Or are they somehow influenced by culture? No, natural laws, that's a really good question, Medal. Thanks. Natural laws are the same for all. It just is. It's like the eternal laws, but as understood by human beings. And so the formulation could be different, but ultimately it has to be really founded on the eternal law. So natural laws, in order to be genuine natural laws, have to be founded on the eternal law. Parang there's like there's like universalness to them. Oh, you know, it's another good example pala of natural law. The human rights. Human rights. Human rights are a natural law. Why? Because they basically say the basic principles of what human beings are about and what their rights are based on that, right? But how do you translate those human rights concretely in practical situations? Because the human rights are universal, right? Although actually what they say is human rights, the way the UN has formulated, it's very Western. I somewhat agree with that. I somewhat agree with that. But anyway, so Medel, di ba human rights, they're for everyone, di ba? And the way it's formulated is supposed to be universal. So you can take that as an example of natural law. And yes, it applies to everyone. But how do you realize that in particular situations that then you make no, human laws to articulate the human rights? There. Okay. Any more questions? Thanks. No, it's really good questions today. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So for Augustine and Saint Thomas, civil states are designed to realize the happiness of all persons, not just the virtues. So human laws, though imperfect, are meant to guide all persons in their lived, concrete, practical situations toward the realization of the common good. Sometimes those laws are not aligned with the perfect realization of virtues of all the people because not all can realize them. 'Di ba? Laws are not aligned with the perfect realization of virtues because then not everyone can realize that those virtues. Like for instance, hmm, I don't know. I sense that there are a lot of laws like this in the church, but then I can't think of one now. But like okay. Oh, okay, anyway. Maybe just an example. I don't know if this is actually true, but like just for instance, like okay. Just for instance, that the high that the law should be that everyone should do the examen 3 times, ideally, right? 3 times in their life. They should do the examen 3 times. But actually, because not everyone does it, so they say at least once. Because not everyone can really is not that virtuous and can realize their virtues according to the best. So when you make a natural law, you always try to look for, well, okay, we're composed of different people with different temperaments. What kind of law can we make so that it will be fruitful for different people with different temperaments? Because sometimes if you just force people to do the examen 3 times a day, maybe it won't be that useful. Okay. But the eternal laws are there to guide us towards the perfection of virtues. I mean, the natural laws are there based on the eternal law. Okay. But human laws are not always aligned to realize the perfect realization of our virtues. There. Anyway, I think we should stop here for questions, just in case there are questions. Any more questions? No? All right. None? Really? Are you guys Who's at home? Can you raise your hands who's at home? I just want to get a sense. Me not everyone's online pala. I mean not everyone's on camera. Can you just press the reaction thing that who's at home? Yeah. That most others who are not at home, where are you in the library? Put down your hand. Thank you. Who even if you're in LST, you're counted as at home. The ones who are not, who are in LST, and that's not just one person. Example, I'm so sorry. Like this morning, I didn't have morning class. Did you? Who? Yeah, I enjoy them a lot. But if ever there are times when we have them who are going to have difficult time, just difficult. Sense. That's fine. Okay, see you next week. Please tell, okay, tell. Okay, so next week we're gonna watch a movie. All right. Um. Now here's the choice. I can make a short lecture in class, and we all watch the movie in class. All right. Or okay, that's good, Sam. So or our so sorry. So the choice is next Thursday we're gonna watch a movie. It's a 2 hour movie. Would you like to watch it in class? All right. I'll make a short lecture, maybe 30, 40 minutes, make the lecture in class and then show the film. Or should I just, should we just, um, should I show it? Should I just give you the movie and just make that short lecture in class? Okay, so here's the vote. Raise your hand if you want to watch the film together in class. If you need to. All right. Okay, brother okay, Felix, brother Elmer. Just two. Oh, three. There are three people. Um, okay. Who would rather that I share the file and then you just watch it on your own before next week? Oh, just two. Oh, wait. Okay, I'll wait. Maybe you still don't know how to use the raise your hand. Come on, guys, raise your hand if you want to. Ah, all right. Okay. Then it's still okay. There's a clear majority of people who would rather I share the film, but there's some people who don't care. Some people didn't raise their hands. Does that mean you don't care either way? All right, no preference. Okay. All right, good. So now I'm confused. Um, yeah. Why? What if? Okay, I'll just share it. Fine. I'm gonna share the film. I'm gonna look for a version. I'm gonna look for a version with subtitles. Okay. But since you're gonna watch a film, I'm going to have a shorter class next week. All right. Because I'm gonna compensate for you watching this long film. Now, my question, okay, I have another question. Okay, get ready to raise your hands. Oh, Medel already downloaded. Medel, you are such a pirater. Congratulations. Okay, and Nadim says majority wins. That's true. That's not natural law. That's just human law, Nadim. Anyway. Okay, last question. Last question. Who, if I'm gonna give like a 45-minute lecture before the film, would you rather, after the film, before or after the film, would you rather I give it online? Who wants to have class online next week if it's a 45-minute class? Online? Oh, yet again, a majority of people. Yeah. Okay, so I guess guys, next week we're meeting online again. Sorry, Jesuits. I know you hate online. Stanis is like, darn. But yeah, anyway. But maybe we can ask Brother Stanis and to no, it's not just online. No, I'm just kidding. No, but maybe we can next time we'll set it up so that we can watch it in the classroom. Okay, so next week we'll meet online for a short bit, but by then you should have watched the movie already. Okay, all right. So who's gonna Medel? Can you share it with me, your classmates? How can you do that? Or no, give it to me so that I can share it with your classmates. Maybe you can put it in a Google Drive. Do you have that, Medel? Are you? I sorry.
No, okay.
Do you have it on a Google Drive or something? Can you share it with me?
I
Or
will do my best, sir. Or I will just share it with my classmates. I will put it in a flash drive and
okay, okay, okay. Yeah, okay. Is that inconvenient? Because if it's easier for you, and okay, sige Medel, hold ka lang dyan. I'll try to download it with subtitles, Ren. Then maybe I should be the one to share it. Okay, anyway, sorry for the confusion. But, so here's the instructions. Ay, sorry. It's okay, Medel. I'll do it na lang para you won't have difficulties. So here's the instructions. This week, the main task is to watch the film because that will be part of your exam, but also of course, read the reading. I'll add another. So, oh, sorry, I have to explain this pala. So, I'm going to add another reading. It's also St. Thomas. But actually, it's the same thing. It's where this reading was taken. But it's the original form. Okay? The disputatio form. Okay? I'm gonna put the disputatio form, read it to, so that you know how it looks like in its original form. Okay? But also read Michael Curtis' excerpt because it's easier to understand it in that form. Okay? But I also want you to read the disputatio form. I'm gonna add that. So you're supposed to read those two readings, and then we're going to have a reading quiz next week. Okay? But you're supposed to watch the film too, because I'm going to relate the film to the reading quiz. So maybe it might be a bit easier for you guys to have at least one or two questions that have to do with the film. Okay? So it's easier to reflect. So again, assignment, film watching before the next class. Then the next class again is online because I'm just going to give input before the exam based on the film and the last lectures on this. All right? All right. Bye, guys. See you next week.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.